Hey everyone, if you're here with us, I bet you're ready to get more out of life, right? Like add more value to things, to your world, maybe even change things up a bit out there in the big wide universe.
I like that.
So that's why today
Yeah.
we are going deep
Kidding.
into a book
Yeah.
called Value Added Living.
I love this book.
You are worth your worth and even more. It's a mouthful,
It is a mouthful.
but the ideas,
Oh, it's catchy though.
super interesting.
It is catchy and the ideas are just
Yeah.
really powerful.
So basically, this book is saying we're all sitting on this gold mine of potential, right? Like different ways to be valuable
Yeah.
that we can use to build a life that is, I don't know, just better, I guess. More impactful,
Yeah.
more
I
fulfilling.
got it. You hit the nail on the head. There are all these different forms of capital
Okay.
that we can leverage and we can maximize to really have a much bigger impact than just, bringing home a paycheck.
Okay. I love that idea. I'm all about unlocking hidden potential. So
Yeah.
where does this book start with all this?
Well, one of the first things that got me hooked was how it dives into the history of money,
Okay.
from the very, very beginning.
Like bartering.
Yeah. Like way back when people were just trading a cow for some grain.
Oh, yeah. Like Econ 101.
Exact.
Not the most efficient system, though.
No, definitely not. The book kind of traces the evolution of money through all these different forms, like from bartering to using commodities like, shells and gold,
Right.
all the way to like the digital currencies that we use today,
Yeah.
Bitcoin and all that.
Okay, so we went from cows and grain to Bitcoin.
It's wild, right?
That's a pretty big jump.
It really is. It's fascinating how what we think of as valuable and how we do these exchanges
Yeah,
has completely transformed.
totally. And speaking of digital currencies, have you ever thought about how much trust is involved with something like Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah.
It's literally just lines of code,
Right.
but people are buying houses with it.
It's insane. It just shows you the power of believing in something and all agreeing.
That it has value.
Okay, so that kind of reminds me of something that this book talks about a lot,
Okay.
which is reputation.
Yes. Reputation and trust.
Right.
It's so important no matter what type of capital we're talking about. And I love that they actually quote Warren Buffett.
Ooh, yeah, I love his quotes.
Right. This one is so good. It says,
Great, eh?
it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it.
So true. Okay, so this book takes us through the entire history of money and value.
Yeah.
But then where does it go?
Well, it actually recommends a couple of classic books
Good.
to kind of get us in the right mindset.
Ooh, recommendations.
Yes.
Hit me.
Okay, so The Richest Man in Babylon
Okay.
and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you read those?
I've heard of them. Yeah, they're personal finance classics, right?
Exactly.
I gotta check those out.
They're really good.
Okay, cool. So we've covered money and trust and reputation.
Right.
What I'm really interested in is how this book goes beyond just financial capital,
Because they talk about this value-added living, which
Yeah.
seems way bigger than just money.
Yeah, it totally is. That's where things get super interesting. They actually dive into this idea of Adam Smith's invisible hand.
Oh gosh, invisible hand. Okay, refresh my memory on that one.
Yeah.
It's from econ class, right? It's that idea that the market just kind of,
Magically works itself
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of it.
okay.
But this book takes it to a whole new level. They basically argue that as we're pursuing our own goals and passions, we are also unintentionally making society better as a whole.
Okay, so it's our ambition
Yeah.
benefits everyone.
Like a ripple effect.
Okay, I'm starting to see this value-added thing now.
Yeah. Right.
It's not just about improving myself.
Yeah.
It's about how all those little improvements add up to something bigger.
You got it.
Okay, and then this book goes on to define 12 specific forms of capital.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking way more than money in the bank here.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of those?
Okay. Well, some of them are the things you'd expect, our skills and education.
Okay.
But then it gets into some really cool ones, like spiritual capital.
Spiritual capital. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about that one.
Okay. So it's basically all of our internal resources.
Okay.
Our values, our beliefs, our sense of purpose,
Right.
things like compassion, gratitude, inner peace.
Oh, so all that good stuff.
Yeah, all that good stuff that we don't always think about as being valuable,
Right.
but it actually is.
I guess because it affects how we look at things
Yeah.
and how we interact with people.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got skills and education and spiritual capital. What else?
Okay, let's see. There's call-in capital, which is about aligning our careers with what we feel like we're meant to do.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Finding your purpose.
Yes. And then talent capital, which is all about figuring out what we're naturally good at.
Okay, so like our natural strengths.
Mm.
I love that. It's like giving yourself permission to explore those things you're passionate about. And like you said, turning those passions into something valuable
Yeah.
for ourselves and maybe for the world.
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. So what else?
Oh, there's training capital,
Training.
which is like investing in ourselves to learn new skills and gain more knowledge.
To like always be learning.
Exactly. It's
Right.
so important to like stay curious and keep growing throughout our lives.
Totally agree. There's this quote by Mark Twain that I love.
Ooh, I love Mark Twain.
He said, "The man who does not read good books has no advantage over the man who cannot read them."
It's so true. It's
Yeah.
like we have this incredible access to knowledge these days.
Yeah.
It's a shame to waste it.
Totally. And like along those same lines, there's experience capital,
Yes.
which is all about like real world experience
Right.
through work or volunteering or even just like life's challenges.
You got experience is the best teacher. Right.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
I feel like no matter how much we read or study,
Uh-huh.
there's no substitute for just like getting out there and doing things.
Yeah.
And messing up and learning from it.
Yeah, totally. And the book even talks about like transferable skills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the skills you can use in different jobs or industries.
Exactly. Things like communication, problem solving, teamwork.
Right. Those are important no matter what you do.
They are.
Okay. So we've got skills, education, spiritual capital calling, talent, training, experience.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Okay. There's network and reputation capital.
Okay. Network and reputation. It's like that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right. But it's more than just like having a ton of contacts.
Yeah.
It's about building real relationships with people, demonstrating your value to them.
Right.
And just having that mutual respect and support.
And building trust. Right.
Yeah.
Because as we said before, reputation is everything.
Yes.
Okay. So skills, education, spiritual capital calling, talent, training, experience, and network and reputation. That's like 7.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other 5?
All right. So number 8 is ideas capital.
Ideas capital.
Yeah. It emphasizes that everyone has the capacity to come up with good ideas
Mm-hmm.
and that those ideas can actually be turned into something valuable,
Like profitable.
even profitable.
Whoa. Okay. Tell me more about that one.
Well, the book actually lays out this whole step-by-step process
Oh, wow.
for like conceiving an idea, nurturing it, executing it, implementing it, and then profiting from it.
So it's like a whole business plan just for ideas.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm loving all this so far.
Yeah.
Do you have any like examples of how a simple idea has turned into something really successful?
Oh, tons. Think about Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Like Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg just came up with that idea when he was a student at Harvard,
Right.
and he saw a need for like connecting students online,
Uh-huh.
and it turned into this global thing.
Wow. That's crazy. So you're saying those late night ideas that you have when you're hanging out with your friends
Uh-huh.
could actually turn into something huge.
They totally can. The point is to not just like dismiss those ideas as being silly. You got to nurture them, explore them, and see where they might go.
Okay. I'm ready to start carrying an idea notebook with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay. So we've got skills, education, spiritual capital calling, talent, training, experience, network, and reputation and ideas. That's 9.
Hmm.
What's number 10?
Number 10 is time capital.
Okay. Time capital. So that's like the whole time is money thing.
It's similar. The book argues that time is our most valuable resource,
Okay.
and it's the one that we have the least of.
It's limited. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's about like making conscious choices about how we spend our time.
Okay. So choosing to do things that get us closer to our goals
Mm-hmm.
rather than just like wasting time on
You
distraction.
got it.
Okay. Time capital.
Mm-hmm.
That one's a game changer. What are the last 2?
Okay, so the book touches on a few more, like emotional capital,
Mm-hmm.
which is about things like empathy and trust.
Uh-huh.
And then we already talked about reputational capital.
Okay.
And then there's this interesting one called temperament capital.
Wait, hold on. Temperament capital. My brain needs a minute to process. What is that one?
Okay, so basically temperament capital is about our natural personality traits
Okay.
and how those traits affect our potential for success in different areas.
So it's like acknowledging that some people are just naturally more outgoing
Uh-huh.
and some people are more introverted,
Yeah,
and that both of those things can be strengths.
exactly. Like figuring out what kind of environment is the best fit
Uh-huh.
for our personality.
Okay, I can see how that's helpful. It's like playing to our strengths instead of trying to be someone we're not.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 11. What's the final form of capital?
The 12th one is energy capital.
Okay. Energy capital. So like physical energy.
Physical and mental.
Yeah.
It's about managing our energy levels so that we can be more productive and feel better overall.
Okay, that makes sense.
Uh,
I definitely know that when I'm well rested and I'm taking care of myself,
uh-huh.
I'm way more creative and I can get more done.
Exactly. The book talks about how important it is to prioritize things like sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress management,
Yeah, all the good stuff.
all the good stuff. It's like making sure our batteries are charged up
Right.
so we can tackle our goals.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone through all 12 forms of capital.
Will it?
From skills and education
Yeah.
to spiritual capital, time capital,
Uh-huh.
even temperament capital.
That's a lot, right?
It's a lot. It's clear that this book has a much bigger vision of what it means to be successful
It really does.
than just like making a lot of money.
Yeah, it's about so much more.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I love is that it doesn't just tell us about these different forms of capital.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us actual advice on how to use them.
Yes. Actionable advice.
That's what I'm excited to talk about. But
Yeah.
before we do, there's one thing I'm still curious about. You mentioned earlier that the book talks about turning ideas into reality.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, sure. So the book basically says that anybody can have a good idea
Okay.
and that those ideas can be turned into something real and valuable.
So it's not just about like big tech companies or like those super entrepreneurial people.
Nope.
Anyone can have like $1 million idea.
Absolutely. It's about realizing that innovation can come from anywhere. And the book gives you a framework for taking an idea
Uh-huh.
and making it a reality.
Okay, I'm getting inspired again. Do you have any other examples of successful ideas besides Facebook?
Oh, yeah, of course. How about Uber?
Okay.
The founders came up with the idea because they couldn't find a taxi in Paris.
Oh, wow.
And they thought there needs to be a better way to get around, and
Yeah.
bam, look at them now.
That's amazing. That's
No.
like another example of how a simple idea
Yeah,
can totally change things.
totally. It's
Yeah.
a reminder that you don't need to be some big shot
Uh-huh.
to make a difference.
Yeah.
It's about having a good idea,
Right.
a plan, and the drive to stick with it.
It's about being a doer, not just a dreamer.
Exactly.
Okay, that's awesome. So we've talked about ideas of capital, but there's also this thing called personal branding, right?
Oh, yeah, personal branding. That's all about presenting yourself to the world in a way that shows off your best qualities and what you stand for.
So it's like creating a brand for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
like a company would for their product.
Exactly. You want to tell a story that people connect with
Right.
and build an online presence that looks professional.
Okay, so it's about showing people what you're good at and what you're all about.
Uh-huh. It's about standing out from the crowd.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. We've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
from spiritual capital to personal branding.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to know before we wrap up this value-added journey?
Well, the book actually ends with this really fascinating discussion on temperament and success.
Oh, yeah, temperament. Okay,
Yeah.
remind me again. What's temperament exactly?
Basically, it's like our natural disposition, our personality,
All right.
our quirks, the things that make us us.
So, like, some people are just naturally more outgoing
Yeah,
and others are more reserved.
exactly.
Yes.
And the book talks about how these different temperaments can affect our potential for success in different areas.
Okay, so it's kind of like matching your personality
Uh-huh.
to the right career path.
It's like finding that perfect fit.
Right. So someone who's really analytical and detail-oriented might be amazing at something like accounting,
Uh-huh.
whereas someone who's super creative and loves to express themselves
Yeah,
might find more fulfillment in like a field like art or design.
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like finding the right environment where you can thrive.
Right.
And the book also talks about grit,
Oh, yeah.
which is like perseverance,
yeah.
that ability to keep going even when things get tough.
It's so important.
Right. Because sometimes things don't work out the way we planned,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about like not giving up on your goals.
You got it.
Okay, I love that. So we've covered so much today,
I know.
from the history of money
Yeah.
to personal branding,
Mm.
spiritual capital, the power of grit.
We've been busy.
I feel like I have this whole new toolbox
Yeah.
for unlocking my potential.
And don't forget about your network,
Right.
your reputation.
Yeah.
Make time for those things that light you up
Uh-huh.
and never underestimate your own ideas.
Okay, I won't.
Yeah.
It's like we're not just chasing money here.
Right.
It's about creating a life that's actually meaningful and
Yeah,
fulfilling,
that's the goal.
right? It's like a totally different way of looking at success.
It is.
It's not just about the money.
It's about so much more.
It's about all these other things.
Exactly.
Okay, this is awesome. So before we move on to part 2, is there like one final thing we need to know?
Yes. The book leaves us with this really thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
It suggests that even though our background and upbringing can definitely impact our opportunities,
Uh-huh.
they don't have to define our potential.
So where you come from
Yeah,
doesn't have to determine where you end up.
exactly. There are so many people who have achieved incredible things,
Mm-hmm.
even though they came from really tough situations.
Right.
It's about things like education mentorship and just that willingness to like defy expectations.
Okay, that's super inspiring.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that everyone has the potential to do great things,
Yeah.
no matter what their circumstances are.
Totally.
Okay, I'm feeling really motivated now.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered so much in this deep dive,
Yeah.
from the evolution of money to personal branding, spiritual capital, and the power of grit. I feel like I have this whole new toolkit for unlocking my potential.
That's great.
And don't forget the importance of your network and reputation,
Yeah.
and making time for the things that bring you joy.
Right.
And never underestimate the power of your own ideas.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
like this whole holistic approach to creating a life of purpose and meaning,
Exactly.
where we're not just chasing financial success,
Mm.
but we're also building up these qualities that make life truly rich
Yeah.
and fulfilling.
And remember, the book really emphasizes continuous learning and growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being curious, always wanting to learn new things and have new experiences.
Yeah, like a journey of self-discovery,
Exactly.
but with a focus on creating value and making a positive impact on the world.
You got it. That's the beauty of this value-added approach.
Okay, I'm on board.
Good.
So where do we go from here? How do we put all this knowledge into practice?
Well, the book ends with this really powerful call to action. It tells us to choose one form of capital that we want to develop,
Okay.
and then take just one small step today to start living that value-added life.
So it's not just about listening and learning.
Nope.
It's about doing something.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm ready for that challenge. But before we move on to part 2, I got to ask, what's one thing that really stuck with you from all of this?
You know, honestly, the thing that really resonated with me was temperament capital.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder that we all have these unique strengths and tendencies,
Huh.
and that success isn't one size fits all.
Right.
It's about finding the right environment where your unique qualities can shine.
I love that. It's like giving yourself permission to be who you are and to pursue a path that really aligns with your natural inclinations.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, do you think our temperament can change over time? Or are we pretty much stuck with what we've got?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it deserves a lot more exploration.
Right.
Maybe our core temperament stays the same,
Yeah.
but maybe we can get better at adapting and growing over time.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground today. And I feel like I have a totally new perspective on what it means to live a value-added life.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks for taking me on this deep dive.
Of course, it's been fun.
And to everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into value-added living.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to create a life that's both meaningful and impactful.
Yes. And remember, you are worth your worth and even more. Until next time.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different forms of capital,
Right.
like skills and education and spiritual capital and all that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really struck me is how interconnected they all are.
Yeah.
It's not just about focusing on one or two of them. It's about recognizing how they all work together
Yeah.
to create this like bigger picture of well-being.
I totally agree. They all feed into each other.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so let's say there's someone who is like really passionate about art.
Okay.
They might have this natural talent for painting or sculpting. You know, that's their talent capital.
Right.
But maybe they've never had any formal training.
Uh-huh.
So that's where training capital comes in.
Okay, so they take classes?
Yeah, they could take classes or workshops, or maybe even find a mentor.
Right, to like
Yeah.
really hone their skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so they're building on their talent
Yeah.
through training and experience.
Mm-hmm.
Where do the other forms of capital come in?
Well, as they get better and better, they might start sharing their work.
Okay.
Maybe online or at like local exhibitions. And that's where their network and reputation capital starts to build.
Right. because they're meeting other artists
Yeah.
and potential buyers, maybe even gallery owners.
Exactly. And that can lead to all sorts of opportunities.
Okay, so it's like a ripple effect.
Yeah. One thing leads to another.
Right. Okay, so then maybe they start thinking about turning their art into a business.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where ideas capital comes in.
Exactly.
Because they have to figure out how to actually make money from their art.
Right. They could sell their originals or make prints or even teach workshops.
So it's like all these different forms of capital are feeding into each other to create this like cycle of growth.
Totally. And don't forget about spiritual capital and time capital.
Right. Those are important too.
Yeah. The artist's values and their beliefs and their sense of purpose, those are going to shape their creative journey.
Right. And their time management skills are going to determine how much they can actually get done.
It all ties together.
This is so cool. I love how this book shows us that we're capable of building these multifaceted lives.
Yeah.
If we just learn to tap into all these different parts of ourselves.
That's the beauty of it. There's no one right way to do it. It's about figuring out what works for you.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the actual advice in the book.
Okay.
On how to develop and leverage all these different forms of capital. Let's start with skills capital.
Okay.
Since that seems like a pretty foundational one.
Yeah, skills are super important, and the book emphasizes that they're not set in stone.
Okay.
We can learn new skills and improve the ones we already have.
That's good to know because it can feel kind of overwhelming
Yeah.
to think about developing new skills.
It can be a lot. So the book suggests breaking it down into smaller steps.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to learn like a whole new programming language,
Right.
you could just focus on one aspect of it each week.
Exactly. Baby steps.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What about people who aren't sure what skills they should be focusing on?
Good question. The book actually recommends networking with people in your field,
Okay.
going to industry events,
Uh-huh.
and even volunteering to gain experience.
Volunteering. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great way to try new things.
Okay, so we've talked about learning new skills, but what about the skills we already have?
Oh, yeah. That's where self-awareness comes in.
Okay.
You got to take stock of what you're already good at
Uh-huh.
and see which of those skills are transferable,
Transferable.
meaning you could use them in different jobs or industries.
Okay, so like someone who's worked in customer service might have really strong communication skills,
Exactly.
and those could be valuable in a sales or marketing role.
Totally. You got to think outside the box.
Okay, so skills capital covered. What about education capital?
Okay, so education capital is about more than just like degrees and diplomas. It
Yeah.
includes all kinds of learning.
Like what?
Online courses,
Okay.
workshops, mentorship programs.
I love that. It's like always be learning.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn.
Totally. And the book talks about how important it is to have both breadth and depth in our learning.
Breadth and depth.
So like exploring a wide range of subjects, but also diving deep into the things that really interest us.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm.
And like you said before, mentorship is so valuable.
Oh, yeah. A mentor can be such a great guide, especially when you're trying to learn something new.
Okay, so we've covered skills and education. What about calling capital?
Calling capital.
That one's kind of tricky for me.
Yeah, it can be a tough one. So basically, it's about finding work that's aligned with your purpose.
Right, like finding your dream job.
Yeah, but it doesn't always happen overnight.
Mhm.
It can take some time and exploration.
So how do we figure out what our calling is?
The book suggests thinking about your values.
Okay.
Pay attention to what really gets you excited and try out different things to see what feels right.
So it's more about exploration than like having this sudden epiphany.
Exactly.
That makes me feel better because I always thought it was supposed to be like this big aha moment.
Right.
But it sounds like it could be a process.
It definitely can be. And remember, your calling can change over time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. What you're passionate about today might be totally different 10 years from now.
So it's not about finding this like one perfect thing.
Nope.
It's about staying open to new possibilities.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that. So we've covered skills education and calling. What about talent capital?
Oh, talent capital. That's all about embracing what you're naturally good at.
Okay, so like recognizing your natural strengths.
Yes. And finding ways to use those strengths to your advantage.
Okay. But sometimes it can be hard to see our own talents.
Yeah, that's true. The book suggests paying attention to the things that come easily to you,
Okay.
the things that you enjoy doing, and ask other people for feedback.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because sometimes other people can see things in us that we don't see in ourselves.
Exactly. They can give you a fresh perspective.
Okay, so once you've identified your talents, then what?
Then it's about figuring out how to use them.
Okay.
Maybe you need to develop them further.
Right.
Or find creative ways to apply them in your work or personal life.
Okay, so it's all starting to come together now.
It is right.
It's like all these different pieces fit together to create this amazing picture.
I love that analogy. It's like a symphony where all the instruments are working together.
Okay, so we've covered skills, education, calling, and talent. What about training capital?
Training capital is all about investing in yourself
Okay.
to improve your skills and knowledge.
So like taking courses and workshops.
Yeah. And reading books and articles.
Okay.
And just always being open to learning new things.
I'm all about lifelong learning.
Me too. And the book suggests being really intentional about your learning.
Okay.
Figure out what you want to learn. Set some goals and make a plan to achieve them.
So it's not just about random learning.
Nope. It's about being strategic.
Okay. I like that, strategic learning.
Yeah. And remember, mentorship can be a big part of this too.
Right, because a mentor can help you learn new things and guide you along the way.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered skills education, calling, talent, and training. What about experience capital?
Experience capital is all about recognizing the value of your experiences.
Okay.
Even the tough ones.
So it's about learning from our mistakes.
Yeah. And seeing challenges as opportunities for growth.
Right, because even when things don't go the way we planned, we can still learn from them.
Totally. The book encourages us to think about our experiences and identify the lessons we learned.
Okay, so it's about taking the time to reflect
Yeah.
and figure out what we can take away from each experience.
Exactly. And use those lessons to make better decisions in the future.
Right. And it's not just about reflecting on the past. It's also about seeking out new experiences. That will challenge us and help us grow.
Totally. Like trying new things at work or volunteering in your community.
Right.
Or even just picking up a new hobby.
It's about stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Okay, I love that. So we've covered skills education, calling, talent training, and experience.
We're on a roll.
I know. What about network and reputation capital?
Network and reputation capital are all about relationships.
Okay.
Building strong relationships with people, both personally and professionally.
Right, because like they say, your network is your net worth.
It's so true. Your network can open doors for you, and your reputation can make or break you.
So how do we build a strong network and a good reputation?
The book says to be intentional about it.
Okay.
Go to events, join organizations, and just make an effort to connect with people who share your interests.
Right. But it's not just about collecting contacts.
No.
It's about building real relationships.
Exactly. You got to nurture those relationships.
Right.
Be a good listener. Offer support.
Yeah.
And find ways to add value to the lives of the people in your network.
So it's about give and take.
Yeah. It's about creating win-win situations.
I like that. Okay, so we've covered skills education, calling, talent, training, experience, network, and reputation. That's 7.
Almost there.
What's next?
Next up is ideas capital.
Ideas. I love talking about ideas.
Me too. It's so much fun to brainstorm.
Right, because we all have ideas.
We do.
But sometimes it can be hard to know what to do with them.
Yeah, sometimes they just feel like fleeting thoughts.
Right.
But the book says that we can turn those ideas into something real.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, first you got to capture those ideas.
Okay.
Write them down in a notebook or use a note-taking app.
I need to get better at that.
Me too. It's so easy to forget a good idea if you don't write it down.
Right. Okay, so we've captured the idea. Then what?
Then you got to take some time to think about it.
Okay.
Explore its potential, brainstorm different possibilities, and maybe get some feedback from other people.
Oh, that's a good idea. Because sometimes it can be hard to see our own ideas objectively.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
good to get an outside perspective.
Okay, so once you've fleshed out the idea and gotten some feedback, then what?
Then it's time to take action.
Okay. But sometimes taking action can feel really overwhelming.
It can be. So the book suggests starting small,
Okay.
break down the big idea into smaller steps, and just focus on making progress one step at a time.
Okay, so baby steps.
Exactly. And remember, not every idea is going to be a winner.
Right.
Some ideas will succeed and some will fail.
But even the failed ideas
Yeah,
can teach us something.
they can. Every experience is a learning opportunity.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about skills, education, calling, talent, training, experience, network, and reputation, and ideas.
Ew, that's a lot.
I know. We're almost through the whole list, though.
We are.
What's next?
Next is spiritual capital.
Spiritual capital,
Yeah, this one's all about our inner resources.
like our values and beliefs.
Exactly. And things like compassion, gratitude, inner peace.
So basically, all the things that make us feel good on the inside.
Yeah. And the book argues that these things are super valuable.
Okay, I can see that.
Uh-huh.
Because how we feel on the inside definitely affects how we interact with the world.
It does?
But how do we cultivate spiritual capital?
Well, the book suggests doing things that nurture your inner self.
Like what?
Things like meditation or mindfulness or spending time in nature
Okay.
or connecting with your spiritual beliefs.
Those are all good ideas.
Oh,
I know that when I make time for those things,
no.
I definitely feel more grounded and centered.
Me too. And the book also talks about the importance of self-reflection.
Like taking the time to examine our beliefs and values.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we've covered spiritual capital.
Mm-hmm.
What about time capital?
Time capital is all about recognizing that time is precious.
Right. We can't get more of it.
Exactly. So we got to use it wisely.
Okay, so how do we do that?
The book suggests setting priorities, making schedules,
Uh-huh.
and learning to say no to things that don't really matter.
Ooh. Learning to say no. That's a tough one.
It is, but it's so important.
Right. Because we can't do everything.
Nope. We got to focus on what's really important.
Okay. And we've already talked about reputational capital earlier.
You did.
So what about the last one on our list?
The last one is temperament capital.
Okay. Temperament capital. Remind me what that one's all about again.
It's about understanding your natural personality
Okay.
and how your personality affects your potential for success.
So like, are you more introverted or extroverted?
Exactly. And are you more analytical or creative?
Okay.
And the book says that there's no right or wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding the right environment for your personality.
So if you're more introverted,
Yeah,
you might not want to work in a job that requires a lot of social interaction.
that's a good example.
Okay. And if you're more creative,
Uh-huh.
you might not be happy in a job that's really structured and routine.
Exactly. You got to find a job that lets you use your creativity.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've covered all 12 forms of capital now.
We did it.
From skills and education to spiritual capital,
Uh-huh.
time capital, and even temperament capital.
That's a mouthful.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to think about all these different aspects of ourselves.
It is. And the book gives us so much practical advice
Right.
on how to develop and leverage all these forms of capital.
And I love that it goes beyond just like making money.
Yeah.
It's about creating a life that's truly fulfilling.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so before we get into the practical stuff,
Okay.
there's one thing I'm still curious about.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the book talks about turning ideas into reality.
Oh, yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So the book basically says that everyone has the capacity to come up with valuable ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And those ideas can be turned into real things.
So it's not just about those big tech companies or those people who are like born entrepreneurs.
Nope. It's about recognizing that innovation can come from anywhere.
Okay.
And the book actually gives you a framework for taking an idea and making it a reality.
Okay, cool. So do you have any other examples of successful ideas besides Facebook?
Of course. What about Uber?
Okay, Uber.
Yeah. The founders had this problem.
Okay.
They couldn't find a taxi in Paris.
Uh-huh.
And they thought there's got to be a better way.
Right.
And they turned that idea into a global business.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like another example of how a simple idea can change the world.
Totally. And you don't need to be a genius
Uh.
or have a ton of money to make a difference.
So it's about having a vision,
Yeah,
making a plan, and then just going for it.
exactly. It's about being a doer.
Not just a dreamer.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about ideas, capital,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also this thing called personal branding.
Oh, yeah, personal branding. That's all about creating a brand for yourself.
Okay, like a company would for their product.
Exactly. It's about telling a story that people connect with and building an online presence that showcases your expertise.
So it's about showing the world what you're good at.
Uh-huh. And what you stand for.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all this fits together.
It does, right.
We've covered so much in this deep dive,
I know, it's a lot.
from spiritual capital to personal branding.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to know before we wrap up?
Well, the book ends with this really interesting discussion about temperament and success.
Okay, temperament. Remind me again. What's temperament exactly?
It's basically your natural personality. You know, your quirks, the things that make you you.
Okay.
And the book talks about how different temperaments can affect your potential for success.
So like some people are naturally more outgoing
Yeah,
and some people are more introverted.
exactly.
And both of those things can be strengths.
They can. It's about finding the right environment where your unique qualities can
So
shine.
like if you're really analytical,
Mm.
you might be amazing at something like accounting.
Hmm.
But if you're more creative, you might be happier in a job that lets you express yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. So it's about playing to your strengths
Hmm.
and finding a job that's a good fit for your personality.
Yeah.
And then the book also talks about grit,
Oh, yeah. Grit is so important.
right? Like perseverance.
Exactly. That ability to keep going even when things are tough.
Because we all face challenges,
We do.
but it's about not giving up on our goals.
You got it.
Okay, I love that. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the history of money to personal branding,
Mm.
spiritual capital, and the power of grit.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
I feel like I have so many new tools now
Good.
for unlocking my potential,
And don't forget about your network and reputation.
right?
Make time for the things that bring you joy.
Uh-huh.
And never underestimate the power of your own ideas.
Okay, I won't. It's like a totally different way of looking at success.
It is, right?
It's not just about the money.
It's about so much more.
Yeah, it's about all these other things.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on to part 3,
Okay.
is there anything else we need to know from this book?
Yeah. The book actually ends with this really thought-provoking idea.
Okay.
It suggests that our background and upbringing can affect our opportunities,
Hmm.
but they don't have to determine our potential.
So like where you start in life
Yeah.
doesn't have to dictate where you end up.
Exactly. And the book gives all these examples of people who achieved amazing things,
Yeah.
even though they started out with very little.
So it's about overcoming challenges
Yeah.
and proving people wrong.
Uh-huh. It's about believing in yourself.
Okay, I love that.
Okay.
So before we wrap up this part,
Okay.
what's one thing that really stuck with you from all this?
Honestly, the thing that really resonated with me was temperament capital.
Okay.
It's such a good reminder that we all have these unique strengths and weaknesses,
Uh-huh.
and that success isn't one size fits all.
Right.
It's about finding the environment where you can thrive.
I like that. So
Right.
it's about being self-aware and making choices that are aligned with who you are.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great takeaway. And it makes me wonder, do you think temperament can change over time? Or are we pretty much stuck with what we've got?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it's something that deserves more exploration.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
and I'm excited to keep exploring these ideas in part 3.
Me too. It's going to be good.
It really is amazing how all these pieces fit together, right? It's
Yeah.
like we're building this incredible mosaic of our lives using all these different forms of capital.
I love that analogy. It's so true. And what I appreciate about this book is that it acknowledges that everyone's mosaic is going to look different.
Right,
There's no one right way to do this.
exactly. And that's what I find so empowering about this whole value-added living idea.
Yeah.
It's not about comparing ourselves to others
Uh-huh.
or trying to fit into some predefined mold.
Right.
It's about figuring out what makes us unique and using those unique qualities to create a life that feels authentic and fulfilling.
I love that. It's about recognizing that we all have something special to offer, that our contributions matter.
Yeah, no matter how big or small.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all 12 forms of capital.
Yeah.
We've talked about turning ideas into reality and crafting a compelling personal brand.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else this book covers that we haven't touched on yet?
Actually, there is. They dive deeper into this concept of temperament capital.
Oh, yeah, temperament capital. We talked about that briefly before.
We did.
It's like that idea that some people are more analytical
Yeah.
and some people are more creative,
Uh-huh.
and that both of those things can be strengths.
Exactly. The book argues that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to success.
Okay.
It's about finding the right environment for your personality type.
Right, so if you're someone who loves to think things through and you're really detail-oriented,
Mm-hmm.
you might be really good at something like accounting or engineering.
Yeah, those are great examples.
But if you're more of a free spirit and you love to express yourself,
Uh-huh.
you might find more fulfillment in a field like art or design.
Right. It's all about finding the right fit.
This makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually figure out our temperament? Are there like tests we can take, or is it more about just like paying attention to ourselves?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
There are some personality assessments out there,
Okay.
like the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, they can give you some insights into your personality.
Okay.
But the book also stresses the importance of self-reflection, like
Right.
really paying attention to your own patterns of behavior.
Okay.
What are your preferences? What energizes you? What drains you?
So it's about being really honest with yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so once we've figured out our temperament,
hmm
how do we actually use that knowledge?
Well, the book suggests using it to guide your decisions,
Okay.
like what kind of career you choose, or how you manage your time and energy.
So, like, if you're more introverted,
Yeah.
you might need to schedule more downtime.
Right. To recharge.
Okay, and if you're more extroverted,
Mm-hmm.
you might thrive in a more fast-paced environment
Totally.
where you're interacting with people all the time.
It's about creating an environment that supports your natural tendencies.
I love that
Yeah,
because it means we don't have to try to be someone we're not.
exactly. Embrace who you are.
Right. But we can still grow and evolve.
Of course, we can learn new skills and expand our comfort zones.
Mhm.
But understanding our temperament can help us make choices that are more aligned with who we are at our core.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to life.
Yeah.
It's like this whole value-added living concept is really about self-discovery.
It is. It's about getting to know yourself better so you can make choices that lead to a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Okay, so we've explored all 12 forms of capital.
We did.
We've talked about turning ideas into reality, and we've even touched on the importance of understanding our temperament.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. So is there like one final takeaway or call to action that you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that this is an ongoing journey. It's
Okay.
not something you just figure out overnight.
It's about continuous growth
Yeah. It's about always learning and expanding.
and finding ways to contribute to the world.
Exactly. No matter how big or small those contributions might be.
Okay, I love that. So remember, everyone, this is a journey,
Yeah.
and it's okay to take it one step at a time.
Totally. Just keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to make a positive impact.
I'm definitely feeling inspired to do just that. Thanks so much for guiding me through this deep dive.
Of course. It's been my pleasure.
And to everyone listening out there, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into value-added living. Remember, you are worth your worth and even more. Until next time.